This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW. Written and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 171, entitled A MGTOW/Masculist Talks to a Manslave. Description. This flyer imagines a MGTOW/Masculist talking to a manslave who has regrets about locking himself into a financial cage by having a kid with a fluffy wife. It spells out the advantages to men of not being manslaves, but rather being MGTOW/Masculists, that is, men's libbers. Now the flyer itself. A MGTOW/Masculist talks to a manslave. My son-in-law has recently made himself a manslave. He's Chinese with a master's degree in computer science and got himself a well-paying job with a large US infotech company and has recently moved to the US to work there with a much higher salary. In a few days he will visit, and I imagine the following conversation I will have with him. In reality, I probably won't, because if I piss him off, he may say negative things to his mother, my Chinese wife, whom I'm hoping will give me a green card in a few months so that I can stay in China and not have my life turned upside down with great stress. The imaginary conversation goes a bit like this. Me. On your last visit, you mentioned that you've been having regrets about having had a baby and now feel you are locked into a financial cage, unable to do what you really want. You say the work you're doing is bachelor degree level programming that bores you with your 140 IQ, that you would prefer to get a PhD and do research in much more interesting stuff like artificial intelligence. So why did you choose to become a manslave to a female? Brackets. I don't know what his reply would be, so I won't even try to give one. I'll just continue my monologue. I can't scroll for some reason, so I have to go to the shift bar. This is my quotes, if you stay in the US, and you probably won't for more than a year or so, because the dollar is about to lose its international reserve currency status, which means that the US dollar will become purely domestic and hence will be forced to devalue to about half of its current value. The Jewish banksters, who are the shadow government of the US, have been out to destroy the US for a century and have now succeeded. They sent the country's manufacturing capacity mainly to China, so that when the dollar crashes, the US will not be able to import much because it won't be able to export much to ensure a balance of payments in trade. The US standard of living will fall to third world levels. There are more guns than people in the US, so there will probably be a civil war against these Jewish banksters and their police state soldiers. Their 800 FEMA, F-E-M-A, what is that? Federal Emergency Management Administration, maybe? There are 800 FEMA camps, there are 3 billion hollow-tipped bullets, there are millions of 4-body plastic coffins, Obama's police state executive orders, their militarization of the police, their thousands of suburban tanks, etc. I advise you to keep enough cash at hand, not in the bank, so that you can fly out your family at short notice when things get violent, when the food shelves are bare and there are riots and shots fired. If this does not happen, and I don't see how the dollar can survive much longer, given the momentum of the world in rejecting it, then my strongest advice to you is not to take out US citizenship. Doing that could be a disaster for you. A green card, sure, but not full citizenship, because if you do that, then you would be subject to US law, which could financially massacre you. If you and your wife live in the US for years, then she will be influenced by US feminism. She will learn that the US divorce courts have been taken over by the fluffy feminists, And if she gets bored with you a decade from now, she has the legal power to destroy your life. She can take your kid, take your house, force you to pay child support, and since she has never worked, making her a real fluffie, you may be forced to pay her alimony so that she can remain a fluffy parasite off you for the rest of her life. So, be smart. Don't take this risk. Stay a Chinese citizen, because Chinese divorce law is so much more favourable to men. If you divorce in China, you will keep the kid, because you have the money, and she has never worked. My God, you paid for her to sit on her fat parasitic bum for a couple of years before she got pregnant, staying at home, not working. What were you smoking? I guess you didn't know of the research that shows that the happiest couples are childless, and that the unhappiest couples have teenage kids. Since the teen age is half of the childhood years, why bother having kids at all? If they're only going to lower your total happiness, you would be better off never having them in the first place. The earth is already way overcrowded, so why bother bringing another useless eater into the world? If you had not married and not had a kid, not become a manslave, you could have been doing your PhD now, having a lot more fun, instead of doing the bachelor level shit work that now occupies your whole day, day after day, year after year. You're stuck in a financial cage, and you cannot escape from easily. Speaking as a masculist, I suggest you push her out to work once your one kid is off to kindergarten, so that she can earn some of the money, so that you can earn less and switch to a less well-paid PhD assistantship. If you never get to do what your dream is, then you are going to have a frustrated, thwarted life, and that will make you bitter. It's a pity you did not hear about MGTOW/Masculism earlier, so that you could have avoided falling into the trap laid by your fluffy wife, who is quite happy to have you pay for the house she lives in to raise her kid. She will not want to lose you because you are so exploitable. You earn a good salary, so she lives well off your income. She will see you as a valuable asset and want to keep you. If you start resenting her for the financial cage she has put around you, then your relationship a decade from now may end in divorce, and she will be really angry that she has lost you as a cash machine, as a cash cow, and will use US law to extract everything she can from you if you are stupid enough to take out US citizenship. So for Christ's sake, don't. About the best scenario I see for you if you don't divorce is that you manage to get her out to work, and she does fairly well. You stick with one kid, you get your PhD, and then your life will change. You'll be doing what you love, so your life will be much more fulfilling. You can create the AI company that you always dreamed of, and who knows, your company might even be a success, in brackets, although statistically 90% of companies fail, close bracket. But with one kid and your wife a real FIP, then your marriage and life may not end up so badly. It may survive. In any event, I consider it more likely that you'll be back in China in a year or so, because the US will no longer be the city on the hill, but rather a third world shithole, perhaps a Jewish bankster-controlled police state with a civil war and millions being killed. That's a real possibility. To other young men around the world reading this, don't marry, don't have kids. Spend your money on yourself. The world is already overcrowded. Don't create more useless eaters. Have a happier life by being a MGTOW masculist, thus forcing the gender politicians to men-fair the gender laws in society. You can get the regular sex you want from women without paying the traditional price of being a manslave to a fluffy parasite. You can twef, that is, live the 2A to F lifestyle. That is, have a relationship with a FIP, financially independent person, woman, who has her own apartment, as do you. When the relationship fails, as nearly all do, you both just walk back to your two apartments, cost-free to the man. There's no divorce because there's no marriage. There's no loss of your apartment because she's a FIP. There's no child support because no kids. There's no alimony because she's a FIP. By tweffing only with FIP women, you put enormous moral pressure on fluffies to become FIPs. Otherwise, they won't even get a man to tweff with. As the population really starts crashing, and the fluffy feminist gender politicians put a heavy bachelor tax on you, then just leave the country. Go to a cheap third world country where the cost of living is much lower, so that your savings have much higher purchasing power, thus allowing you to retire earlier in life, so that you can spend a high proportion of your life doing what you love doing, rather than what some employer dictates to you to do, because you are under a financial contract to him. So I hope this little talk as a MGTOW masculist to you will influence you not to become a manslave like my son-in-law, who has now locked himself into a financial cage that he will have difficulty extracting himself from, so that he can create a life that he loves, rather than frustrates and thwarts him. So take heed, be warned. Don't become a manslave. Wake up. Get educated on men's lib issues. Become a MGTOW/masculist. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name de GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW Flyers.